we're talking about competition, right? So we
Yep.
have the election, which was a competition, and then you in business you have competition. And how do you craft your language regarding the competition? Like that's the question that we're examining here. Welcome to the Kingspiration Podcast. This is the place where you'll learn how to get unstuck and gain momentum in your life and business. Each week, we tackle the real aspects of entrepreneurship, personal development, relationships, and fitness. I'm your co-host, Ethan King, from Atlanta, Georgia, USA, entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and best-selling author of Wealth Beyond Money.
And I'm your co-host, Justin King, no relation to Ethan, from Cape Town, South Africa, entrepreneur, speaker, and business growth strategist. Our journey crosses continents and cultures, sharing wisdom and experiences to propel you forward. Welcome to Kingspiration. Let's start the conversation. Ethan, you have just survived a presidential election. We are 1 week on from the elections. Interesting outcome, but that's not what this conversation is all about. What I wanted to ask you and get your thoughts on is, do you think people were voting along the lines of being in opposition to or in support of? Because there seems to be so much tension in this campaign. I'm really interested to know if you think people were making the decision on who they wanted to vote for because they wanted to vote for the person that they really support, or they were really voting because they disliked or they opposed the other candidate more. And I think we can apply that same thought process to a few other things when it comes to thought leadership, content creation, the ability to put oneself out there online, sharing information or sharing content that we come up with. It might be the thing that drives you or scares you, terrifies you. But I'm just wondering, as a starting point, if we look at the election as a starting point for this conversation, which way do you think it went?
Well, I think in this election, it was, obviously very divided. Literally half the country felt, very polarizingly divided because half the country felt one way, half the country felt another way. I think that generally speaking, those who voted for Trump were pro-Trump, and those who voted for Harris were of the mindset anyone but Trump. And again, that's a very, very broad generalization. But I've heard, this is anecdotal, but I've actually heard some people say, I would take anyone but him in the White House, which I don't think that that's necessarily the right mindset to have. But I guess emotionally, he's just said some things that really upset a lot of people. But in the end, he prevailed. And, I think that the best thing to do now is to support him and just let's all be optimistic about the future. And no matter which way you voted, the president of the United States that won the election, I believe fair and square, is Donald Trump. And, I do like a lot of the things he talked about. Yeah, of course, he's said some mean things. And he's also, let's not forget, he's a celebrity and an entertainer. So some things you have to kind of take in jest. But, let's all be positive. That's what being American is about. I heard a great quote: right wing, left wing, same bird. So we have to understand. Yeah, it's great, right? We're the same bird, whether you picture an eagle or whatever it is. The two wings are to create balance because we're not meant to agree on how the country is won. It's how the country is operated. It's not supposed to be one particular way. What makes America awesome is that we rotate back and forth. We have this balance of right wing views and left wing views, and it's supposed to go back and forth. It's not supposed to be all right or all left all the time. So, yeah, I'm proud to be an American, and this is what it's about. Let's be supportive of it.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited for the US, even though I'm removed from it down here on the tip of Africa, down in South Africa. But I think I'm excited that the elections are behind, and as you say, same bird now, and can everybody, where they can see opportunities to work together, come together, focus on the positives, and move forward. But as I said, I don't really want to make this a political conversation. I'm wanting to understand and pick your brain around, do you think that is a strategy? And let's park the elections, but maybe in a business sense. Are there any businesses that come to mind where their strategy is less about getting people to like them more, so support them more, and position their
their competitors as the enemy. So get consumers to dislike competitors more than they actually like you, so they end up buying your product or using your service. Is there anything that comes to mind? I've been picking my brain, trying to think. There's definitely one or two around, but I was wondering if there's any that come to mind for you.
What first comes to mind is that any type of marketing strategy where you're just attacking the competition, usually, if especially if you're mentioning the competition by name, then you're usually going to give more attention to the competition. You're just giving them free advertising. So I would not suggest that you incorporate a competitor's name in any of your advertising. Save your advertising dollars for yourself. Instead, what you should do is, if you know what it is that makes you awesome, your unique value proposition, and where your competitors are lacking, talk about those things, but not the competitors by name. Really accentuate your features and the benefit to the end consumer. Paint a picture of the vision, where you're going, your core values, like that really resonate with your ideal target customer. And then you don't have to put down the competition. I think politics, I don't know, has politics always been this? It seems more vicious now than it was in the past, but maybe it's just amplified by social media. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's amplified. Think it's also doesn't seem as vicious. So we had an election earlier this year in South Africa as well, and it was a tightly contested, very important election for the country, and we have a lot of racial tension, but I don't remember it being as vicious as some of these, as you use that word, and it's a good word, as vicious as some of the things that were seen in the election that's just happened in the US now. It was crazy. And I think that's probably because it is more widespread on social media. It's far more followed, hence the reason there are far more memes that come out. So I think it is amplified. It is absolutely a magnifying glass on the US election compared to what happens in South Africa. We are on the tip of Africa, not a huge country. So, but it is very interesting watching it from the outside.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Can you think of any companies that have had a successful marketing campaign with dissing the competition?
I think your answer was spot on. I think if you find yourself going the route of actually mentioning the competition's name, you may be needing to save your marketing dollars for legal fees. So you possibly need to be quite cautious about that. I can think of a lot of campaigns that, like you've mentioned, there will be mention of where competitors fall short, and there will be tongue-in-cheek mentions of their name, but without directly saying it. And it'll be some smart way of, and it probably Pepsi versus Coca-Cola might be some of those that have really done this well, or Burger King versus McDonald's. Those would be some of the really smart ones that
Yeah.
come up. But
Speaking of McDonald's, have you heard of Wendy's? You have Wendy's in
we don't
South
have a
Africa?
Wendy's. No Wendy's. Yeah.
Okay, so Wendy's is another fast food chain here along the lines of McDonald's, Burger King. So they came to mind when you asked me this question, because they have their Twitter account is very snarky, and they roast other people and other companies. And I just pulled up a tweet to see what they said lately. So McDonald's is famously known for, every time you ask for ice cream at McDonald's, they say, "Oh, the ice cream machine is broken." It's like a running joke for the past, I don't know, 50 years, right? So Wendy's put out this tweet. It says, "I scream, you scream, we all scream for working ice cream machines." And then under that, they have these pictures of all of these tweets where people are tweeting about McDonald's ice cream machines being broken. So it's funny because Wendy's, like, now, because Wendy's, their logo is like this little girl with like this redhead little innocent looking girl, but their account is always like roasting other people. So it's kind of funny, like that juxtaposition. And it keeps you looking at it. But does it make me want to eat Wendy's? I don't know. So I wonder, I question how much it works as far as advertising. Maybe it does.
Yeah, I think Nando's is a fast food chain that started in South Africa that does that really well. Again, they jump on trends more than knock anybody else, and they use really smart humor to catch people's attention, and that then spreads like wildfire on everybody's phones because everyone thinks it's so amazing. So I think it's probably a nuanced version of what we're saying now around this creating opposition or creating support. It's the ability to make fun of, but draw attention to your own, make fun of in a way that's not belittling necessarily of your competitors, but endearing to you, if that makes sense. So you
Hmm.
actually you building rapport. Maybe that's a good word. Building rapport with your customers by not attacking your opposition, making light of it. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe there's something to that. But
Yeah.
what is interesting, and maybe another lens to look at this through, is having conversations with peers, colleagues, with friends. What comes to mind is people get very worked up around medical insurance and and those kinds of service providers. And people will often tell you, if they ask you who's your provider and you give them an answer, they'll tell you that you're wrong, and they'll tell you who you should move to. And when you say why, they'll start listing all the things that are wrong with your medical aid provider, your health provider, rather than things that are really so much better about their own. So there is definitely something to this, that people are making decisions based on what they don't like about a brand, a service provider, a business, an individual, more so than what it is about the product that they necessarily support. So there's definitely something to it. I'm struggling to articulate it, and I'll put my finger on it precisely, but there's something to it.
Well, it sounds like you bring up the medical industry, and at least in the US, this is a market that is ripe for disruption. I mean, oh my God, it is the most horrible thing. I mean, if you go to the hospital and you get a bill, you don't know what it's going to be. They'll charge you like $75 for one pill that's a painkiller, and they charge you for the tissue, everything that you use. I mean, it is a business, but there is no transparency, and it is ripe for disruption. So if you think about markets that have been disrupted, I mean, the classic one that comes to mind, let's talk about Netflix and Blockbuster is one. I don't remember Netflix like really throwing jabs, putting down Blockbuster. They just did their thing. I think they were even trying to get Blockbuster to buy them, and Blockbuster rejected. And
Correct.
famously now Blockbuster's extinct. But I don't remember Netflix like throwing jabs at Blockbuster publicly. Maybe if they did, I missed it. Or another Uber and versus taxis, right? Uber's clearly disrupted that market. I mean, there's so many advantages to Uber. I mean, you have the ability to track things, you have transparency with pricing. I mean, everything, right? The convenience. But I've never seen an Uber ad that's like, screw taxis. Don't, don't grab a taxi, take an Uber. Maybe there have been, I don't know. But I think if you really are aware of the deficiencies in a certain marketplace where there's a void and you can make that problem better, if your service makes that problem better, to just deliver great service and let people know what it is that you offer, and you don't have to put the other person down.
I think that's possibly what it is. And very often, if you have converted a customer, so from a previous business service provider, somebody else, they will then become that opposition to your competitors for you. So you can carry on doing your thing, focus on your differentiators, focus on the better features that you've got, focus on what you do differently, better in another way for your customers and consumers. Focus on that from a marketing point of view. Your consumers and customers that make the change, they will be the ones that go in opposition to your competitors, because they've also got to justify to their friends and colleagues why they've made the change. And I think that I was thinking a lot around people who emigrate. And sorry, I'm taking this conversation all over. But I was thinking about people who emigrate, and very often a big part of what they have to do, and living in South Africa, I've got experience of a lot of friends and family having emigrated. People very often have to convince themselves continually post the immigration that it was the right call. And they'll do that by not only telling you the amazing things of the new country that they're in, but also about and reminding themselves of the reasons that they left the other country and the terrible things about it and what wasn't working there and why would you stay if this was happening. And I think there's something to that. It's about justifying your reason, your thought process for voting for X, for moving to X, for moving to another country. Justification and the positioning in your own mind that it was the correct decision.
Yeah, definitely. And we as humans, we want to do that. We want to feel like we made the right choice with whatever we did. And we will defend that, even sometimes past the point of logic or reason, right? Because we don't want to be wrong or seen as having been wrong. So I like the parallel. You have the parallel of we're talking about competition, right? So we have the election, which was a competition, and then in business you have competition. And how do you craft your language regarding the competition? Like, that's the question that we're examining here. So what's your takeaway from this as an outsider who's not an American? I would like to hear, like, what's your takeaway from this conversation so we can kind of land this plane for our listeners?
I think my takeaway it really is always focus on the value that you're bringing to the table, and less around what somebody else isn't doing. And that's what got to me, I think, about the narrative around this election. But I get it. That's the game that has to be played there. But let's take it to a business context, is understand the gaps between yourself and your opposition, but really land the value that you bring to the table by filling those gaps, rather than the negativity or the value or the lack of value that your opposition provides by not fulfilling them. And as I say, once you do that, once you get consumers or customers moving across, they will be the ones to spread the narrative to other people. They will become your referral mechanism around what is lacking and falling short and the bad job that the opposition is doing. But you stay true to one form of narrative, and that's focusing on the value that you bring.
Yeah, that 100%. You have to focus on the benefit that you are delivering to the end consumer and really amplify that. And I will add to that if you are keenly aware of the biggest issues that your customer base is facing, or in politics, that your constituents or your citizens are facing, and you speak to those pain points and how you're going to solve those problems, then that will help you win. So there's a parallel between business and politics.
I think let's land it right there. Amazing. Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Kingspiration. We hope this conversation sparked insights to ignite action in your life and business.
We're on this journey together, sharing our challenges and successes to help all of us take the next step towards building momentum and ultimately reaching our goals.
If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit, and leave us a 5-star review.
And remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on our weekly conversations. Until next time, keep rolling, keep growing, and keep being inspired.